Hi, I'm Cautex, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about what I do on Remnant of Ner'zhul to try and maximize my DPS as an arms warrior, as well as some other useful knowledge regarding doing this fight as a DPS warrior. Now, since I don't have a rank 1 parse on this fight, I obviously can't say that I have all the answers to min-maxing this fight. Additionally, because I'm one of the orb punters for my guild, I'm likely never going to have a top parse, and also the perspective that I have about how this fight plays out is likely going to be different than yours. So if you've got any tricks that I don't mention, tell me about them in the comments. Anyway, let's get started. I'm currently Night Fate, and I do this fight using the standard single target arms legendary of Enduring Blow, and I also use the standard single target build. I'm lucky enough to have an enhancement shaman in my raid, so I take sudden death. I also take collateral damage to help with a little bit of funnel damage that I'll talk about in a bit. While on most fights, picking between defensive stance, second wind, or bounding stride rarely makes a meaningful impact on the outcome of the encounter, having defensive stance is really strong on this fight and will absolutely save your life in certain scenarios. Something really important to understand about this fight is that the mechanics plus the push timings of this fight are awful for the timings of your cooldowns. Other than on the pole, there's likely never going to be a time that you're going to get the full benefit of your CDs. This is because the boss is going to be almost constantly moving, and you're also likely going to have to hold DPS at key points for push timings. With that said, despite this fight being potentially awful for your CD timings, there are a lot of little optimizations that you can do to try and make up for that. One of the best tricks that I found is to use the orbs for a bit of free funnel damage onto the boss while they haven't been hit by suffering and then don't take damage. When you use sweeping strikes and cleave and overpower, that extra overpower will spawn its own dreadnought line. The damage of this dreadnought line is not tied to the damage of the overpower that spawned it. This means that even though the orb takes 99% reduced damage, you can hit it with a sweeping strikes overpower, and it will spawn 2 full damage dreadnought lines, meaning that it basically gets double value on the boss. If you use Sweeping Strike shortly after the orbs spawn, its duration will be long enough to last you through the boss casting Suffering and then the orbs dying, meaning that there's basically no reason not to use Sweeping Strikes in this way. Additionally, Sweeping Strike should be available for most, if not all, of the orb sets. Since we're on the topic of cleave damage, once there's 3 or more orbs, then depending on their spawn positions, I will use Bladestorm once they become damageable. One convenient thing is that the timings of the start of the fight before the first shatter are 100% consistent, and they happen to line up really nicely with the timings of Rend. Specifically, if you use Rend as your first GCD, the first set of orbs will spawn when there's about 3 to 4 seconds left on that first Rend, which gives you just enough time to hit sweeping strikes, while the tank moves the boss over to an orb, and then reapply Rend, which will then get cleaved onto the orb. This second Rend application will typically end right around the time that I'm charging back to the boss after punting my orb. After the first shatter, the timings depend entirely on when you made that specific push, so it's not likely that you'll see super consistent lineups like this for the rest of the fight. Now, if you get targeted for Malevolence and you're using the standard Mass Dispel strategy, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to be the person in the back. Because of this, I want to talk about the options that you have to make sure that you stay on the platform, because there's a lot of them, but they all have caveats to making them work. Heroic Leap only works if you're still above the platform. So if you get beyond the edge, then it will likely throw a no path available error and you're going to fall to your death. So if you're going to use Heroic Leap, then you need to make sure that you're going to use it right as the dispel is happening. Charge works to get back too. However, if the boss is too far away, then you're going to be out of range and you're going to die. And depending on your latency, if the boss is just barely too close to be able to use charge on when the dispel goes off, I've seen instances of the range check not updating in time for you to charge back. You can also use Intervene, but this is even less consistent because you're going to be using it on a player who's getting knocked back in the opposite direction as you. Alternatively, if you're Night Fae, you can use Soul Shape, which has the same exact pitfall that Heroic Leap does, because if you use it while you're over the edge and blink forward, you'll drop straight down and die. Finally, Bladestorm does make you immune to the knockback effect, though if you do this, you're almost certainly going to need to use an extra defensive, as you're going to have to run out of the puddle that spawns when Malevolence is dispelled, and it does a lot of damage on Mythic. I personally always save Soul Shape specifically for dealing with Malevolence, but regardless of what you do, the thing to focus on is getting it timed perfectly with the Mass Dispel. If you're punting orbs, then within each phase, you'll be able to Heroic Leap your orb to the edge every other set of orbs. Now, depending on when you push the shatters, it might allow you to do 2 in a row, but it will not be possible to use Heroic Leap on every single set. So for the sets that you don't have a leap, I recommend asking your paladins for a freedom and looking to use Intervene on somebody that's near the edge if possible. In addition to all the other bugs that you've heard about with the Orbs of Torment, there is another one. If you happen to use a keybind to interact with mouse over and you put that on your scroll wheel, which is what I do so I can try and grab it instantly, If you do this, then there's a chance that sometimes you're going to get multiple stacks of the slow, which if you either don't leap all the way to the edge, or this is one of the times that you don't have leap available, then you're really going to want to start screaming for freedom because you're going to absolutely crawl. Now, there's a lot of really bursty raid damage on this fight, and all of it is magic damage. You should be using Spell Reflect on every Malevolence explosion, or Shatter, or if you get a bunch of the Torment debuffs. If you get targeted for Malevolence, then you should go into defensive stance because you're going to be out of range of the boss anyway, so it doesn't really matter what your damage is. As always, tell me why my opinions are dumb, and what tricks you personally use that I didn't mention. Lastly, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more.